I feel really stuck and I want to figure it out. Welcome to the Therapy Brothers podcast.
I'm Brannon.
I'm Tyler.
We're brothers.
We're therapists.
And we know recovery.
Bring your stories, your questions, your successes with real recovery.
Hey, Tyler, you ready to have some hard conversations?
Let's do it.
Let the Therapy Brothers podcast begin. Hey, Tyler.
Brannon, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. I had something that reminded me of you over the weekend.
Oh, no.
I don't know why this reminds me of you, but like we bought a bag of potato chips and my son was eating the potato chips. And I just remember when you'd get home from school, you'd like grab a bowl and you'd go into the kitchen and you'd grab like an apple, a handful of potato chips, and like something else, a piece of bread, and you'd go sit down and watch Double Dare.
Double Dare.
And you were like in heaven. You were like eating those chips, like eating that apple, just watching your Double Dare.
I literally don't remember anything except for the Double Dare part, but I do remember Double Dare. Like that show is. I wonder how many of our listeners actually remember Double Dare.
Oh man, we watched it like faithfully for a couple of
Show
years.
someone like climbing up that big fake nose with all the goop in it and stuff.
It was slime. Yeah, you had to like power through all the slime.
That show put slime on the map.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that built Nickelodeon.
Nickelodeon was built off of Double Dare and slime.
I hate slime. You know, I hate Double Dare now. We have so much slime stuck to every like blanket, and my kids are like, "Hey, Dad, I'm making a new thing of slime." I'm like, "Oh,
it's like, they used to have those little like you drop the quarter in and you pull it, twist it out, and you go buy as much slime as possible."
Oh yeah. And now you just make your own, and it's like, oh, I'm adding glitter to this slime. Oh no, slime's bad enough, and now we got glitter. It's awful.
That is such a random memory.
We need to start a thing. We need to outlaw slime. Sorry, kids.
That all started from a handful of potato chips. That's a random train of thoughts.
I know, isn't that? My son ate a handful of potato chips. Reminded me of you watching Double Dare. So.
Yeah. That's actually probably how the traumatic brain works. Is it links things together and you don't even realize how. So. Yeah. We need to do some EMDR about potato chips now.
You're not supposed to analyze me. You're supposed to work with our guest today. So let's get to her.
Get to her. So we actually have a return guest. This is probably over a year ago. Ariel is back on the show. Episode 234, if you want to reference this, because I think there's going to be some connection to this episode. But welcome back, Ariel. Glad to have you on the show.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. So let's see. That episode was more about like, if you can't afford therapy, what are some options for you? So it actually is a really good episode if you've been thinking that. I know lots and lots of people who say that to me all the time. I'm a leader of a Facebook group, the admin for a Facebook group, and I still hear that all the time. So I reference people to that all the time.
That's awesome.
It's good content. If we do say so ourselves, right, Ariel? Like it's good content. Yeah. So fill us in on what's going on with you. Fill us in on, you don't have to give us everything, but tell us where you're at and what's going on with you.
So I'll give a little background. My husband and I have been married 16 years. We have 7 children. We have a small farm on a 2-acre plot in Idaho, and he works from home. He's been doing that a fair majority of our marriage now. The company is based in another state, and so this is his only option as far as work goes, if he was to stay with this company. 4 years ago, he came to me and told me that he had a pornography addiction. He was starting to kind of have a lot of anxiety around it, and I think he was probably having a panic attack when he told me he felt like maybe he was dying, and he just didn't want to die with me not knowing the truth. So at that point, I was extremely compassionate. I didn't really fully understand at that point. I was extremely naive. I never once suspected a single thing. At that point, we had been married 12 years and never found anything, never went looking for anything, completely explicitly trusted him. And so that kind of spurred its own, journey. And you know how it goes when you have a relationship you think is solely built on safety and trust, and then you kind of wreck that. It takes a long time to kind of figure that out. So I have, like, the first 2 years, I didn't really do much for myself. I was solely trying to support him. We tried to figure out ways to, like, app blockers and stuff just to make it easier for him as he was trying to get sober. Um, and during that process, there was a lot of finding out things that I didn't really know. And, for him, it's solely porn. He's never stepped outside of our marriage. But just more detail than I probably should have ever gone looking for. And in turn, I definitely caused myself my own bit of trauma through it. So it really broke for me about 6 months after after he told me. I went on a girls' trip with a couple friends for my birthday, and I came home, and he's like, basically just said, like, I relapsed like all weekend when you're gone. And he was taking care at the time of our 5 kids. And so I literally couldn't even handle what he was telling me, and I just ran out of the house with a set of keys and drove away. I ended up staying the night at a friend's house, and then when I came back, I was like, I talked with someone who works for Peter Zier Ministries, and she's like, I promise you that if you stay in this place, your marriage is done. Like, you need to find a therapist, you need to start having some kind of accountability, all of those things. And so that's what I did. I found a CSAT counselor, and we did a disclosure, and we did, all that process. So fast forward, this is 4 years later. He's been in one solid group, in and out of multiple groups. He's not a committed person. He's very avoidant. And he definitely has, like, some jealousy issues around my friendships. And, I feel like there has been absolutely slow progress, but extremely slow progress. And when you're 4 years into extremely slow progress, it starts to get extremely daunting and very difficult to just keep doing it over and over and over again. And, he has this expectation, like, okay, well, we're 4 years in, you know how it goes, you know what you need, you know what you're going to do if something happens, that we're just going to click right back into place and just start back off where we were, when we've made progress. And I just don't feel that way. I feel the more time goes on, the more times that something happens, the more times that, the more time I need to figure things out. Like, do I want to keep doing this? How long can I handle this? How long can I? And that's how I feel about it at this point. It's just like, I'm at the point where I was like, can I really continue to handle it this way? And I do feel like I don't want to keep doing things this way. So then it comes down to, you talk about your values, and you look at, your needs or your wants for your marriage, and the things that you expect, your expectations. And the truth is, if I didn't have 7 children, I would have left a long time ago. That's the truth of it. But I have 7 children, and my 7 children need some kind of stability in their life. And if I were to, go down the avenue of divorce or separation, then my 7 kids are going down that same avenue. And the problem with that for me is just that I know what kind of trauma that enacts on children, because I was a foster parent for 7 years, and I've had a lot of children come through my home, and I've seen what torn marriages do to kids, and that's not what I want for my children either. So that's kind of where it's at. It's just like, it feels like a catch-22 situation where it's like, I'm doomed if I do it, and I'm doomed if I don't do it. And I feel like I have to make some kind of sacrifice, either in my own values or with my children, to reconcile what isn't happening in my marriage and my relationship with my husband.
You say more
So,
about
yeah.
that? Like, like what isn't happening? Like what specifically is missing for you to be to the point where it's like, look, I'm just staying for the kids. Like what are you
Okay.
not getting out of your marriage?
Yeah. Okay. So let's go with values. Things that are really important to me. I was basically a military kid, even though I wasn't. My dad was an interim pastor. And so we moved every year and a half to 2 years until I was 12. And with that, I really did not see much stability in my life. Like everything changed all the time. So what is important to me is being consistent and being dependable. And he's neither of those things a fair amount of the time. So, like for instance, I got stranded at gymnastics with the kids this one time, and it's obviously important to me because I still remember this memory. It was multiple years ago. And he's like, "Well, I'm sorry, I can't come." He had something to drink and he couldn't drive. And it was at like 7 o'clock in the evening. And I was so upset about it because I had to call someone else, and no one can fit our 7 children in their vehicle except for us, pretty much. We're the only one of our friends who has 7 kids.
Mhm.
And so I had to have 2 people come to help me to get my kids to where I need to get home. And, it's just stuff like that where it's like, I need him to be dependable in a way where it's like, you're the parent, you can help me do this thing. He's currently not going to church anywhere. That's a whole nother story that is basically foundationally, he doesn't feel like any of the churches that we've been to meet what he feels is, because we're slightly more like on the messianic side. Um, and so it's hard to find a church that's values meet up with ours. So I've been taking the kids to church by myself. And I've lost a few kids, I will be honest, in the church. And one of them ended up in a parking lot and could have gotten hit by a car. And so then I
You're
didn't go to church
you're
for
you're
a fair
taking
amount of
all
time.
seven. You're taking all seven.
Yeah, I'm taking all
Right,
7 kids
okay,
with me.
yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like it's important to me, that value. I was raised in a church. Obviously, my dad was a pastor, and it's important to me that our kids are in church. Whether he goes or not, it's still important to me.
Right.
So I'm taking the kids to church by myself because it's a value of mine. Another one would just be like, family is really important to me. I'm one of 8 kids. So we had dinner together every single night, until my mom went back to school and was working nights. But even when she wasn't, any night she could be there, our entire family sat at the table together. We had the same prayer that we said over our meal, and a song that my mom came up with, who is the worship leader, that we sang at dinner. That's Exodus 23:25. And so those things were values that I still like think my parents did a really good job at making sure they were consistently having our family come back together. Um, and he was raised in a broken home with a mom who got married 4 times, who was never home at dinner time, who was rarely there. Most of the meals he made himself. His sisters were old enough that they were out of the house. So he was alone a lot as a kid. So to him, like, he's like, this is my normal. He doesn't feel comfortable being at the dinner table talking. He wants to eat in silence. Well, our kids are not silent, as you can imagine, with 7 kids at a table. Um, and so it's very rare now that he eats at the table with us. And when I was working on values this past week again, and I was remembering that, like when our 4 kids were a little younger, I told him, I was like, I really want you to just eat dinner with us. And we had argument after argument about him sitting at the table to eat dinner with us. And I finally just gave up on it. And I didn't even realize until this week when I was doing values again that that's important to me still. It's still important to me. I just rolled over on it because I got tired of arguing about it and not finding any kind of solution for it. Um, and and there's a lot of things like that where I've compromised, I think, who I was or truly am, so that I don't have to deal with arguing. I don't have to deal with rocking the boat. I don't have to deal with feeling angry or resentment towards him for not doing those things that are important to me. And so there's just been an extreme amount of compromise, and I think it feels like the majority of it is on my side. Um, so, those are some of the ways. Now, in my actual marriage, um, he's still very isolated as a person in general. So he gets off work and he spends a lot of time in his office. Um, and there's still, I think, expectations of like a sexual relationship, even though I like, if we haven't spent any time together whatsoever, I'm like, I'm not even interested. Like, I have hardly had a conversation with you. Like, I don't really feel like doing, and so then there's frustration from him and, those kinds of things. And then either I do it out of obligation or I don't, and I deal with the consequences of him feeling frustrated and going around the house, with that kind of attitude. So there's just a lot of things that are unhealthy in our relationships still. And he said, "Oh, yeah, I'll go to therapy with you," but he wants me to pick the therapist. He wants me to set it up. And if it fails, then it's my fault. And that's kind of how it's been over the course of the 4 years of recovery. It's like, okay, yeah, you set me up with a group. If I don't like it, well, it's your fault. You chose the group, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So, I've been listening through a lot of, I took like a break from listening through episodes of the Therapy Brothers. So then I kind of started listening to multiple in a row. And then, you talk to some of these women or men, depending on the situation, and you hear similar themes of like, okay, these are the things that you need to continue to like think about, dig into. And I do those. And then I'm like, okay, well, you come to this impasse where one, your relationship stays healthy if you put boundaries into place, and they are, you make or break a relationship, right? If the boundaries break your relationship, then which way. And that's what I feel like. I feel like I'm at a Y in the road where it's like, the more boundaries I continue to put in place that I feel like are what I need for myself, then the further I get at the Y in the road, it's like I'm going one way and he's starting to go another way. And I've gotten to the point now where like I just ignore all of behaviors. I live my life normal, and whatever he's doing is his own thing. And if he chooses to come along, great. If not, then that's on him. And, he's the one that's missing out on our children growing up and you know, our relationship with our community and our church and, all of those things. So I find myself in a place where I do get resentful of the fact that I'm doing all these things with our kids and he's rarely there. Which it seems crazy to me with a person who was raised that way, where his dad was barely there, to then continue that same theme in the same house, working from home, to be that way, with his 7 kids. It's hard for me to wrap my mind around. There was a lot of things in my growing up that I didn't agree with, and in turn, I did not bring into my parenting for my own kids' sake, So I don't know. That's basically it. There you go.
So, so it makes sense why you're feeling stuck, because basically it's almost like the more that you try to do whatever you've been taught and that you learn would be your own side of recovery work, it actually puts more tension and stress on the relationship. And then you've got these 7 kids that you're like, well, geez, I don't want a broken home. So now you're stuck because the pathway forward puts more tension and stress on the relationship, but you aren't quite in a spot where you're ready to let go of the relationship, so you don't know what else to do.
Yep. That's pretty much it. Sums it up pretty well.
I have an answer for you, Ariel, and it's a hard one. Um, it really depends on what you want though in the end. So like if like ideally in a perfect world, what would you want? How
A
would you want this to
husband that's
play out?
involved with my kids and my life and my family and my church. And really what I want is him to step it up. That's what I feel like I want. I want him to step it up.
So
The thing is like I married, okay, my mom went back to school and she was gone. And I became the mom of my house. I had 3 younger kids that I had to take care of. I made dinner. I took care of them. I made sure their school was done. All of those things. I started when I was 12 years old when we moved back to where my grandparents lived. And then I went out of my way to get married young. I was married at 19. Actually, I just turned 20. And I did that because I wanted a happily ever after. I wanted a partnership. I wanted, a family. And so now I'm in this position where the options are lose this thing that I've thought I had / dreamt of since I was a small child, or stay and stick with it in a way that doesn't really meet any of those needs or expectations in the first place.
It sounds pretty hopeless. But it's interesting when I ask you what do you want, you say I want a husband that's going to step it up. But at the same time, Ariel, you're doing things to create a husband that doesn't step it up. Like, I'll just take what I can get. I basically disconnect from him. He does whatever he wants. I'm learning how to survive, not getting those needs met, and just trudging forward. The only cost to that is how it wears on your soul and your resentment that you have toward it, and that, which is actually a pretty big cost, right? And so is there a better way? Is there a better way than like just kind of taking it, and it is what it is. So if you were to step up into your values, you've talked about your values, and like really live those values, would that end your marriage?
I honestly have no idea. When I started working on boundaries, which was a little over 2.5 years ago, that was probably the worst our marriage has ever been. In our entire marriage was like trying to figure this stuff out, and that was when he's like, I want a divorce in the December of, it would be 2 years ago. And then following March, when I was on the podcast, like 2 months after he left, and he went to California for 3 weeks and then came back. And it was extremely wearing on my soul, trying to like figure that out and take care of 7 children. This feels easier because there's less mental and emotional pain trying to deal with that at the same time of trying to raise 7 kids on a small farm while homeschooling and being involved in our church. And, our kids are in gymnastics, and, so I feel like I have to make a choice in that way, where it's like, I'm trying to keep my kids' lives as normal as possible. But if I go that route, their lives are not going to be normal, and any kind of normal to them. That would be selling our farm, probably going to public school, because at that point I'd have to get a job. There's just so many things that would completely turn over for them. That is not like, this is what I want for them. What they have right now is what I want for them.
Well, hey, hang on, Ariel. So what you want for them is a mom who will swallow her truths and a dad who won't step into his masculinity and into who he is.
Well, that's just the trade-off, Brannon, and I think that's the hard part here. Is and what you
That's
hear.
where it feels like it's catch-22.
Right? Do you see what I'm saying? Though, but your kids are seeing that. So it's like you want for them to have a stable home, but it's stable with a mom and dad in a marriage who are like in that type of a relationship. I don't think that's very stable for them, right? And so is it one way or the other? Is it, okay, then I'll be honest and we'll end up divorced? Or maybe there's another way. Maybe there's another way where you can get everything that you want, where he is a healthy husband and a healthy man in the relationship, and so are you, healthy in that relationship, and your children get to witness that and see that. Maybe there's a possibility of that. In fact, I know there is, because I've seen actual recovery in relationships take place. I know that's possible. But if you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting what you're getting, which is more resentment and more disconnection.
Well, right? It just brings it to a crossroads here, Brannon, because there's a possibility of not actually being resentful if it can be brought back around to where you're going, Brannon, which is that I'm making a conscious choice to take what I would call the lesser of two evils here for the sake of the greater good. And if that's the case, then I could theoretically change the way that I see it and the way that I feel about it, and then I wouldn't have to resent it because I'm just making the choice that's going to produce the best possible outcomes given the situation I find myself in. So that is one possible way to go with it. The problem is that will be 1,000 times over of having to remind myself, I make this choice on purpose, knowing that nothing's probably going to change in my marriage, but my kids will have a farm and homeschooling. And I'm willing to do that. And because I'm making that choice, then there's no need for resentment. so I can surrender that and I can have peace over that. Now, you
But
and I, Brandon.
that's BS.
Well, that's for us to do. That's for her to decide, Brandon.
Well, I can feel it. I can hear it from you, Ariel.
You can hear it. I can hear it
yeah,
too,
I'm making
Brandon,
this choice, and but you're not okay with it, right?
no. So that's the wrestle. Is she either has to wrestle to find her way to be okay with it because she's making a conscious choice and taking ownership for her choices given the situation, and then she can be frustrated that those are the choices, or there's the possibility of fighting for something different, but taking the risk that it changes everything. And that's going to come with its own set of challenges and struggles. And what's interesting about what you just said, Ariel, is that this is so true in so many situations. When I finally started to have a voice and started to set boundaries, things got worse between us. Shocker. Like, good job. Good job. Like, that's exactly what happens when you actually start getting boundaries right. The boundaries become an invitation for the entire system to shift and change. And then in those moments, it's almost like his responses became the measuring stick of your success. And then you let yourself fall back into this pattern of like, I mean, you're describing, if I heard you right, you're 4 years past disclosure. And I don't know where things are at in terms of recovery, like sobriety parts of that. But what I'm hearing you say is that in the 4 years, the only real recovery that's taken place has been you facilitating, greasing the skids, making sure it happens. Like, there's never going to be the kind of marriage that you want. There's never going to be the kind of engagement that your kids need unless something shifts. And the shift has to be into those boundaries again.
The shift feels counterproductive because what needs to happen is like real recovery needs to happen from his side to be able to build trust with you. And the only way that happens is that you butt out of his recovery. And this is hard because then it's like, well, then nothing's going to change because he's not going to do anything. That's true as long as
it won't change.
That's true as long as you caretake, as long as you swallow your truths and don't live in those truths, then there won't be any friction. There won't be any motivation for him to do that hard work. Now, here's the hard part. When you focus on you and you step into those truths, it will naturally present him an opportunity to either shift alongside of you or to disconnect further from you. And this is where it gets really scary because you know how to keep it all together. You know how to like, okay, he's not eating dinner with us. Like, whatever, it's fine, kids. Like, come to church with me alone. Like, it's fine. It's fine. You know how to do that, which is much less scary than just staying honest and boundaried in a really healthy way. And you can't do his work for him. And you being the external motivator for him to change never will work. But something with that change can shift him to decide, what do I really want in my life? And as long as he's too comfortable, he's not going to do that. Right? And so the worst thing that you can do, Ariel, is to keep him comfortable, but keep resenting him for it. Do you see what I'm saying?
That's signing myself up for more hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think part of it is that I have seen what it looks like. And I mean, if you saw me at what it looks like, I literally had to call someone to come and take care of my kids because I was like, I can't even be in the same room as them. It's too much for me right now. There's too much on my plate already to feel like I have to constantly be at this like extreme mental, emotional place that I can't fix it. I can't fix it.
That's
and
right.
To ignore it becomes easier than trying to fix it. And it is exhausting. Both avenues are exhausting because, I can constantly give this bid for connection. And sometimes he's willing to meet that bid. And sometimes, he has this extreme ways where he's like more involved with the kids and then he'll just peter off and, I may see him one night out of that week, and like knowing who he is and knowing all the things that he's doing and everything. I mean, his like life motto is like, I didn't want to be here. I didn't ask to be born. I didn't ask to live this life. I didn't ask to, and so he has absolutely no driver motivation to shift anything. He doesn't even like, he basically says, I live, I breathe to feed my family, to provide for them, and anything else is just the rest, basically. Like how do you like meet with someone at that place where it's like, oh, I'm so sorry you feel like you're in that place, and now shift that and become like this like extreme, like you're gonna have to change everything about yourself and life and everything else. It's like, I don't feel like he's at a place now where he would commit suicide. I don't think. But he did try to commit suicide when he was a teenager. And he struggled with depression the majority of his childhood and early adulthood. And I think we both had the same expectation getting married. Like looking back, knowing like where he came from and having hundreds of hours worth of experience, like I never would have married him because I would have been able to see like, you are seriously traumatized and you need some help. But I didn't know that, at the time. And there was kind of a little bit of a rescuer mentality. I'm the helper on the Enneagram. And so I want to come alongside people who are in a hard place. And so that's the beginning of our marriage, is someone that was already in a hard place and I was running from a hard place, to then come together and have these expectations like happily ever after. And that was his expectations too. Like someone will finally love me. Someone will finally see me. Someone will finally be there for me. And then, fast forward into recovery and it's like, I'm saying, okay, well, I'm sorry, I can't be there for you. I can't be your accountability partner. I can't listen to every, thought that you have around what you're dealing with, because it's not healthy for me. And that's kind of where the shift happened, where it was like, you're not going to be there for me. You're not here for me. I'm alone. I'm by myself. I have to do it myself. I have to do it alone. And that's never what the position I wanted to put him in. I don't want him to feel that way. But the way that recovery works in this particular addiction is like, there is a lot of things that I have to be hands off with. And, he's always said, you're my best friend. And I don't want to talk to somebody else. I don't want to be vulnerable with somebody else. And he's always struggled with that. Doesn't trust people. I don't even know if he trusts me. And I understand all that stuff is his own stuff. That's not me. It's not my stuff. It's not my responsibility. But we've known each other since I was 10. We've spent the majority of our lives together. More of our lives together than apart at this point. And I don't want to lose any of that either. So it feels like, even if I decided to go down that route, I still lose. I still lose the person that I intend to spend the rest of my life with. And I don't want that either. So I don't know.
That's a real thing, to have that potential grief and loss. And this is the hard part about being in a situation that you're in right now. And this is, I mean, you're speaking the language of probably thousands of people listening to this right now, too, where the pathway forward that invites the new change, that invites the kind of relationship that you were just describing you wanted a few minutes ago, happens to pass through a battlefield where there's an actual real risk of loss. And that's the hard part, is a Brannon. That's why Brannon's saying that, hey, Tyler, this is BS what you're saying. I was just saying that's, you could suffer less if you're not going to step into the battlefield, if you just made it a point that it was your choice to do what you're doing. But both Brannon and I feel like the pathway forward and the invitation into the life that you were designed for, and frankly, that your husband was designed for, happens to pass through that battlefield. It happens to pass through a place of risk where there could be an outcome that neither of you guys really want. But the difference is that passing through that battlefield gives an opportunity for you guys to both have more of what you really want. He says you're his best friend. You can hardly get your heart to wrap around having a conversation with him or engaging with him sexually, and you only do it out of, compliance right now. What would happen? You think that's great for him too? Like, what would happen if he was willing to step into the battlefield and say, I'm going to fight like crazy for my own heart and for the relationship with my wife, so I can have a best friend who wants to hang out with me, so I can have a best friend who wants to engage with me in all ways, including sexually. Like, that's the relationship that we're fighting for. And in order to do that, we have to step through this possible risk of loss. Now, when I do that, if I lose, this is the hard part because you can't see it. It's like you're standing in front of this like big wall of flames and being invited to step into and through it. And because you can't see on the other side of it, the truth is still the best pathway forward, regardless of what the outcome is. Because living in the truth and fighting for what your life was designed for can only produce the best possible outcomes, because that's the reality you find yourself in. And if you're going to stay on the sidelines, you're already signing up for this just long, slow kind of death, to where it's not really going to hit you until you're laying in your deathbed at age 75 or 80 and going, dang, I should have fought for something different. I lived 50 years in an empty marriage for, quote, the kids. And the kids are going to be sitting around your deathbed going, dang, mom, like, how come you were just a shell and a husk of who we thought you could be? And why were you so like penned up? And why were you so stuck in this little place in prison? And you're going to be totally misunderstood. And that payoff won't come until it's too late. And so, yeah, you are in a rock and a hard spot. I ache inside for you, and I ache inside for you and all the other listeners who are in that same spot. That's why the life on the battlefield is worth it, even though it's a risk. And I happen to believe if you got a husband who really wants to work at it, who says he wants you as his best friend, he can take all of that as a call to action, even though it will look messy. He can step into that with you.
I want to give you, Ariel, I want to give you a ridiculous example and walk you through this just to kind of help you see this principle of what is in your power. Honey, I'm sorry, this is not a real example, but let's say that my wife, decided to have no hygiene. So she didn't brush her teeth. She didn't shower. She just stunk. Yeah, let's just say that's what she decided. Okay. And she had all her reasons. There's all this background, trauma, history, whatever. But for whatever reason, like, she stinks. But she still wants like love. She still wants affection. She wants our relationship. So she's like trying to hug me, kiss me, Well, so I have what should I do, Ariel?
I have no idea. Tell her to take a shower, which is what I do. I just say,
Right.
You should take a shower. You know what? The shower is warm. It's comforting. You should just take a shower. That's pretty much
and then she gets offended and she's like, what? Why you tell me what to do? Like, Gall, you think you're so much better than me, blah, 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 blah. So it's like, okay, well, so and that's what you do. You're like, here, take a shower. Here, go to SAL. Here, do this. Here, do that. Do that. Right? Okay. So I could smile and pretend like I like it and kiss her and hug her, even though it stinks. I could do that. Is that helping her? But then there's not friction between us. She seems happy now. She gets the best of both worlds. She gets to not shower and she gets to like be close to me. What's the problem with that one?
It's the same. I totally see what you're saying.
You just get to resent her
Yeah,
You'll just
you get
resent
to
her.
Oh,
be
I
in the
get to
same.
just sacrifice myself and do
Oh,
things that
you're
make
such
me
a
feel
martyr. Way to go.
gross, make me feel gross to do that. And yeah, I'm such like, yeah, yay for me, but like, ugh, like I have to live in this yuck all the time, right?
Mhm.
So there is that option of sacrifice yourself, and addiction will oftentimes bring this option to the partner. Here, please just sacrifice you, and then we can be okay. Then the relationship can be okay. And a lot of times that's the pathway that the partner will go, because it feels like the pathway of least resistance, only at the consequence of long-term suffering in a relationship and doing damage to like the very foundations of that relationship. And the truth is if I hugged her and kissed her, then I'm not being honest. I'm actually manipulating the situation, because I'm scared about the consequences of truth for me, right? So I can't force her to shower. I can give her all the soap I want, whatever. But what is in my control?
You can get space and say that you don't want to do any of those things, and if she's not willing to also take a shower.
So there's a couple things in my control beyond just the space that I take. So my heart is in my control too. So like I can absolutely have some space from her and say, look, I need to sleep in another room. I can't hug and kiss you. But I also have the power over whether I want to have anger and blame or compassion for her. So can I be both compassionate toward her for why she's doing that, and honest with her at the same time about what works for me and what doesn't? And this is what's really hard for people to do, because they seem to have to give up one to have the other. I'll get angry at you so I can push away from you and disconnect and blame you for everything. Then I'm living in my truth. I have the power within me to create love or war. I have that. So I'm going to choose love. I'm going to choose love for myself. I'm going to choose love for her. And in that state of discomfort where I have compassion for her, but at the same time I'm being honest about what works for me, that's where that option is given to her to look at herself. She's going to start smelling something all of a sudden. Huh? Like, oh, I do stink. I never smelled that. I just was mad at him for not hugging me. But now I can smell it because he's so kind and compassionate, but he's also like not hugging me here. So are you following me, Ariel?
Yeah. Yeah, I think I in general my go-to is compassion, which I think does lead me in a place where I do kind of end up being the one that gets taken advantage of in pretty much all areas of my life.
Self-sacrifice is not compassionate. That's not
Yeah.
you're actually in a state of fear, and that's why you self-sacrifice. Compassion is a much different thing than that. It's much different. You're much more likely to step up for you if you're actually practicing real compassion for him. Are you seeing what I'm saying here?
Well, I think I maybe that's where I'm having a hard time. So boundaries has never been a place in my life, literally never. Okay, so then going into a place where I'm trying to figure out my own boundaries. What do I need? You know, how do I need this, that, and this, that, and anything? Okay, um, like I can't tell you how many tears I've cried over just the fact that like I can't even imagine my 4-year-old being in his position and like everything that he had to deal with growing up as a child. Like it breaks me inside to know that. But that it's still to this day, he's 36 years old, will say, that's just like my childhood, or something like, oh, you know, like things that you can tell he's triggered by that thing. And it still has a hold on his life. And I don't know a good way because he honestly is in denial. He thinks that he's totally fine. You know, sobriety is the only thing that he needs in his life, and everything else is fine. His life is fine. He can't do anything to change what happened in his childhood and all of those things. And he's totally in denial of everything that is needed to move forward in his own life. And I think he'd absolutely stay that way. He'd be happy to just stay that way. And he's already showed that that's what, I mean, he's said plenty of times, like, okay, well, if that's what you need, then, I'll just be on my way. So it doesn't even feel like there's a possibility of him stepping up at this point. Like, my two options are we stay together and we stay basically in the same place we've been for years now, or I say that this is it. This is my values. This is what I need. This is what I need from you. If if we can't seem to come to a compromise or an agreement, then he's leaving. I mean, that's the options that he's given me. And we're not talking like once or twice we've had this conversation. We're talking easily dozens of times we've had this conversation. It doesn't matter what it is that I say that is what I need for us to move forward. And I'm not saying there aren't times where I'm going to give him some credit here. I can come to him and say, hey, when we're in an argument, I need you to either one, come back to me so that we can finish it, or two, stick it out with me until we can get through it, because he's very avoidant and it's very difficult for him to stay in an argument.
Do you hear him?
Everything's an argument.
Do you hear yourself handing him the soap right there? You just said, I need you to do this or this. And let's come back to you, Ariel. Who are you? What do you need? When you're in an argument, what do you need?
I need someone that will stay in it and figure it out with me.
Why?
And not just
like,
give up.
What do you need? You need to know that he's committed. You need to know that
if I don't, I feel rejected. I feel like he's just going to reject me, which is what's happening. My worst fear, I don't know if you know anything about Enneagram, but as the helper, is fear of rejection.
Right.
That's my entire life. Like, fear that my mom will reject me. Fear that relationships, because I never really got to build very many strong relationships. And one of the only strong relationships I built, not knowing, I didn't know anything about this as a child, and my parents didn't explain it to me, was the closest emotional relationship I had ever had. My parents separated from when I was 9 years old, and I was 2. My earliest memory is with her. So then for them to say, she's never coming back, you're never going to see her again, and not knowing or understanding any of why, I have an extreme fear of rejection in every relationship. Not just, I have fear of rejection with even my own children. There are things that I will roll over on, even with my own children, because I'm afraid of messing our relationship up. I've seen, like, my parents with several of their kids, their relationship is messed up. And I don't want that for any of my kids. I want them to be able to come to me for anything. I want to be there with them through everything. And, I am afraid that if I decide to make this choice, and I already feel like it's selfish, that my kids will resent me too. And really, that's pretty much all I have left at that point, My daughter is 15. My oldest is 15. And she'll be out of the house. She's very independent already. And I know that she's not going to be the kind of kid who, like, sticks around very long. I was similar in that way. I moved out when I was 17. And so it's hard to... It just feels so selfish to me. Like, choosing any one of these things as an avenue, except for just sticking it out so that my kids have some kind of normal, feels selfish.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. I'm hearing you, because basically that's what's happening is you're finally going and saying, hey, you stink, you need a shower. And he's like, I'm not really going to take a shower. And then you're like, at worst case scenario, you're like, okay, never mind. I'm cool. Don't shower. Just don't leave me. Or at best case scenario, like, he's then going like, you're going to ruin a whole marriage over a shower. And you're like, oh my gosh, like, it's like, no. But you just got to it right here. It took us a while, but we just got to the crux of your stuckness. Mm-hmm. The crux of your stuckness is your fear of rejection and all of the beliefs that go along with that. And whatever is tied to that, your past. Obviously, you were just starting to share some of that deeper stuff, your past history, your past fears, your past struggles. Until there's some peace made with some of those things, those beliefs and those past traumas, it's going to be really, really difficult to hold the line about taking a shower. We allow ourselves to be treated right up to the level we believe we're worthy of being treated. And when you go to him and say, this isn't right, he kind of knows it's not right, but he doesn't want to do the work. He's like, you know what? I kind of like having, dirty sheets and smelling bad. And as long as you stay close to me, then that's the best of both worlds for me. And you're like, okay, well, I'll just stay, because what would happen? What would happen if you actually held the line and he was like, I'm out of here? And that's the fear. That's the cave you fear to enter. And until you make peace with that cave, that's going to keep you stuck.
Yeah. It's easier to, just like what Tyler's saying, exactly what Tyler's saying here. It's easier to go to him and say, here, I need you to do this and I need you to do that. I need you to work recovery this way. I need you to communicate with me this way. I need you to, versus like, if you're afraid of rejection, then why would you show up vulnerable in a relationship? It undermines that. Versus you going and saying, you know what, husband, I'm afraid of rejection. I'm really scared. And what I need from you right now is, and this isn't you telling him what to do, this is you opening up about you. What I need between us is some safety. I need to know that that's there. And if that's not there, then what I'm going to need to do is this. I'm going to need to withdraw in this way. But this lack of trust and safety between us isn't working. So instead of you telling him exactly what to do, you're just talking about what you're feeling, what's going on inside of you. And I think you have a lot of doubt that he'll hear that he'll listen, that he'll hold space for that pain and that fear that you have. But if you
I've
don't,
already done that.
yeah,
I already know what that looks like.
yeah.
Welcome to my world is something that he says fairly often.
Welcome to my world. Well, yeah. See, it so it's thrown back in your face about he turns the tables there. But I would say stay steady with that. Stay steady with you doing your own work so that you can be honest with him. If he turns the tables, then he gave you his answer. And then you have to then say, okay, now what do I do with that? He did reject me. He did abandon me. So how do I go and deal with the emotions around that in a healthy way rather than believe that I'm unlovable and all of those things?
I feel like we need like 6 podcasts for this.
I know.
Yeah, because what happens is I continue to build relationships outside of our marriage, and I continue, like, if I'm being rejected, I'm going to go and meet those needs somewhere else, right? Well, then that causes a problem in my marriage, and he won't. I literally said, you're jealous of my relationships, and because it's obvious to me. Like, if I go somewhere, he's constantly texting me. Right? He wants me to come home. There's a meal that needs to be cooked. Whatever. And I can see clearly that it bothers him that I have close relationships with other people. And recently, he was like trying to give me an ultimatum, like it's either going to be her or it's going to be me. That's basically what he's saying. And I was like,
and all you have to say is she showers.
She showers. Anyway, and so he will go out his way to be a jerk if I spend too much time other places or with other people. And so then it's like, okay, now I have needs that need to be met, right? So I'm going to go and spend some time with friends that know where I'm at, who hear me out, who listen to me, who validate the way I'm feeling. And then I'm going to deal with the consequences of whatever he decides to do in the background because I'm, somewhere else doing something else with someone else. But if I'm here, he's probably going to stay in the office anyway. So I'm not going to see him either way. So,
so
it
you might
only
as well
matters
be with
to
a
him when I'm
friend.
not home. Yeah.
So you might as well be with a friend and then he can
Do you know the
complain.
kind of anxiety and everything that comes along with that? Knowing in the background, my husband's probably relapsing because I'm somewhere else, because I'm not home doing what he wants me to do it the way he
No,
wants me to do it.
he's not
And so now
relapsing
I can't even
because you're doing.
enjoy my relationship with my friend because in the background, I'm thinking about what the crap he's doing that I'm going to have to come home
My
to
husband's so basically my husband's
decide
saying
anything else.
that's the thing though. But basically what you just said is I go to a friend that actually can hold space for me. I'm doing it in an appropriate way. It's not I'm not looking outside my marriage in terms of like another romantic relationship. And he makes the choice. You said because none of what he chooses to do is because of what you're doing. He's saying, hey, I'm dirty and stinky, and instead of going and taking a shower so my wife wants to be around me in the evenings, I'm going to go find a big quagmire and jump in it and roll in it. And then I'm going to try to blame her so that she'll come back and jump in the quagmire with me and we'll roll around together. And instead, what needs to happen is exactly the way you're going. You're taking steps in the right direction. Let that tension be there. Let him roll around in the mud for a while by himself until he realizes no one's coming to roll in the mud anymore. And then he's going to climb up and be like, this stinks. And when it dries, it gets all cracked and weird and nobody's here anymore. Like, I don't like being alone anymore. Like, maybe I should do something different. Oh, what those people over there, they shower and they hang out together. Maybe I'll do that instead. Because I'm sick of rolling around trying to get her to come my way, and she's tired of being dirty and stinky. Like you're taking the right steps by doing what you're doing, even though I know that that's pressing on all of your fears. But that's how you conquer the fears, is by taking the next step.
We're out of time, but
It could be a 6-part series for sure.
We could go on, Ariel. I really appreciate you too and talking about all of this today. And I wish that we could get to more of a conclusion with you. Maybe we will have you on again if you would. But I don't subscribe or believe in this notion of if you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I don't buy that. I think there's two options. There's fear and there's faith. And you, like in every decision you make, you're going to either operate from a state of fear and self-protection, or you're going to operate from a state of faith. Now, when you step into faith, sometimes there's consequences that are hard or difficult or whatever, but that's God's will. And so now you're in God's will and you're learning exactly what you're supposed to learn and you're getting exactly what you're supposed to get. And in that place, even if chaos is all around you, when the wind and the waves come, like peace be still. You will feel peace amidst that storm and that chaos if you operated in faith. If you continue to operate in fear or choose fear as the option, you will feel suffering. You will feel damned. You will feel stuck. And so you're not damned if you do and damned if you don't. But the faith way can be hard, can be scary. So Ariel, thanks again. Really appreciate you. Tyler, any last things?
No, just go along with that. Thinking about what you just said, Brannon. I'm thinking of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Literally through the fire. That was the faithful way.
Yeah.
And the flames could not touch them. Even though there was heat and burning and all of that stuff. That's the piece you're talking about, Brannon, because it's grounded in the truth, and the truth is the pathway forward. So that's the wrestle, is what is the truth, and I will follow the truth no matter what that is. So anyway, Ariel, thank you. I know that you're probably feeling lots of feelings and frustrations. We didn't get all the way to where we maybe want to go, and we'd love to have you back on again sometime if you're willing. But thank you for your willingness to come on and share yourself and wrestle with us this way.
Yeah, absolutely. It's another free resource right here, guys. If anybody wants a free counseling session, this is the way to go.
There you go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
It.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming on. And thank you to our listeners who are a part of this and who give us the feedback that you do. And till next time, you guys keep on keeping on.